Hey everyone, I'm Lily, and welcome to my first episode of my War of the Spark set review. I'm super excited for this set, and yeah, I'm going to be doing as I've done since, I think, Dominaria, so I think I've been doing this for almost a full year now of these set reviews. But yeah, no, I'm really excited to hop into it, and today I finally decided that maybe I should do the multicolored cards first, because a lot of set reviews do this because it makes sense, because it gives you a lot of context for what the other cards are going to be doing, especially when you look at the uncommons in the set. This is going to be, as always, a limited set review. I will have my top 10 cards for a Commander Cube video probably next week, after a few video break from lots of Magic this week. So yeah, so I'm looking at limited, primarily draft, but I will make notes for sealed because there's lots of people, myself included, who are going to be off doing pre-releases this weekend, and I'm super excited for that. I will be at, if anyone's in the Seattle area, I'm going to Mox Bellevue at 4 on Saturday. If anyone else is there, I'll be there if you want to say hi. But, yeah. So we're looking at limited, mostly draft, but notes on that. So a few things about War of the Spark is that War of the Spark has a lot of Planeswalkers. And, some of them are rare Planeswalkers, which function very similar to how we would evaluate prior ones before this. Although there is a lot of them which are the uncommon ones, which only have down tick abilities. Now, these we have to evaluate almost completely differently. And you can't really evaluate them like you do Planeswalkers, because one of the benefits of Planeswalkers is that it kind of sets a pseudo clock on your opponent. Like, they have to deal with it eventually. Otherwise, they'll just, even if you're not like ultimating the Planeswalker, it will get to the point where it grinds out so much value that they have to deal with it. Now, with the ones that the rare ones are low power level that can take up and down, those are not those stills there. Some of them don't have as much of an inevitability, but they do. But the ones that take down, it doesn't have as much that advantage. There isn't that hidden advantage. Also, there isn't as much the psychological advantage that you got with Planeswalkers before, where in the set, because there's going to be Planeswalker in every pack, you're going to be playing with most games. You'll probably see at least one, most matches, you'll at least see a few Planeswalkers. But like in other sets, it might be like, oh, you see a Planeswalker, it has a psychological effect that kind of warps the game around it. And from my experiences, at least at like the local game store level, like has people play perhaps not as well. They take higher risks on trying to take it out and things like that than they maybe should, and didn't generally overvalue it. But yeah, I'll evaluate them all case by case, but just know that there is that difference when we're evaluating them. You can kind of almost look at the uncommon ones and all the others as completely different entities when you're looking at what you want to evaluate them at. It does get a little bit weird when we look at proliferate cards, but we'll get to that later. But let's jump into it, because we have a lot to do. And we're going to open it up with Karn, the Great Creator. We have a few colorless cards before we get into the actual multicolor. We're also doing artifacts and lands here, because they don't fit nicely anywhere else. At least it's not a Ravnica set, so I don't have to like weirdly put like guild stuff in there. So that's, well, it's not a guild set. It's a Ravnica set, but it's not a guild set. But we have Karn, the Great Creator, who's a 4-mana colorless Planeswalker, 5 loyalty. Oh, another thing that all these Planeswalkers have is they have static abilities. And that's another thing that I'll be talking about. And for the uncommon ones, that's the inevitability. That's what will like draw some aggro that might gain you some virtual life, if it's an ability that they need to remove on the field. Karn's ability is activated abilities of artifacts you control cannot be activated. That is not very relevant in, like, sure, it might shut down, like, their mana rocks, but there are not that many artifacts in this set, and that's not going to be relevant. Like, the only thing that I can think of that is that it shuts down that is actually, like, worth shutting down is you could bring that an ability in against Parhelion 2, but there are better answers to Parhelion 2 than Karn. +1, until your next turn, up to 1 target non-creature artifact becomes an artifact creature of converted with power and toughness equal to its converted mana cost. And -2 is you may choose an artifact card you own from exile outside the game or an exile. That's your sideboard. So whatever you didn't draft or was else in your queues, the thing. Reveal that card and put in your hand. Like I said, there's not that many artifacts. Karn just does not work in almost any deck. You might live the dream and want to have like Karn and Parhelion, but that said, Karn is not really what you're looking to do. It's just too narrow to artifacts, and you're rarely going to want Karn in your deck. Sorry, robot friend. Next up we have Ugin the Ineffable, who is a 6 mana, 4 loyalty planeswalker. Colorless spells you cast cost 2 less to cast. Again, there's not many artifact or colorless spells, so that's not super relevant. Which is fine. Ugin's +1, though, is exile the top card of your library face down and look at it. Create a 2/2 colorless spirit creature token. When that token leaves the battlefield, you put the exile card in your hand. -3, destroy target permanent that's 1 or more colors. While his static ability is kind of useless, Ugin is great. +1 is card advantage, creates guys to protect himself. It's not instant card advantage, but that is card advantage. And removal. And, it's essentially, like, on a planeswalker, like, boiled down to its simplest level, card advantage, people, and removal is the 3 things you want from your planeswalkers, and Ugin does all of it. It fits into any deck, and it's just flexible. It is a threat that they'll have to remove, but you're creating blockers or destroying their attackers, and Ugin is very good. And also being colorless, it just keeps you open, it goes into any deck. It's kind of boring in the fact that it is just very generically good and fits into everything. And that static ability is forgettable, but honestly doesn't affect its playability whatsoever. Next up we have Ugin's Conduit, which is an X commander mana cost creature, which is a 0/0, but it enters with X plus muscle counters. Which, that alone, is great. It scales up the game, it always passes vanilla test, that's great, but second ability is not as good. If damage be dealt to Ugin's Conduit while it has +1/+1 counter on it, prevent that damage and remove that many +1/+1 counters. You can kind of look at it as all damage dealt to him is dealt as if it had infect or wither or things like that. So it does shrink when it takes damage, which makes it significantly worse. That said, the fact that it fits anywhere on the curve makes it at least playable. Like, I'm not excited to pick this card, but it's fine, and sometimes you just need a small blocker that will just trade off. Sometimes you want something larger that will, like, eat something and then trade off later, and that's fine. And then, obviously, there's lots of proliferate sources, and if you are in, like, kind of that proliferate deck, although most decks will have some use for proliferate, Ugin's Conduit isn't bad. It also is colorless, so you'll always be able to cast it. It's just like, it's not a good creature with that ability, but its flexibility kind of makes up for that, and it's a solid card that I'm not super excited to pick, but I'm not sad if I have to, if that makes sense. Alright, moving into the color cards, we have a Johnny, the Greathearted, who is a rare planeswalker for 2 green and a white for 5 loyalty. His static ability is creatures you control have vigilance, which is pretty okay. It is nice because it does let you essentially protect your guys. Like, he doesn't create guys, but it doesn't leave you open. Because one thing is that you might think like, oh, it's gonna be super grindy format with all the planeswalkers, and it will be to an extent, but it's gonna be grindy and long in the sense that you will still often be doing a lot of damage in the red zone a lot, because you have to deal with your opponent's planeswalkers. And a Johnny lets you get in with that and also not like have to do that. So vigilance is relevant, and also notably, one thing also note is that this is more important for the uncommon ones because your opponent needs to remove a Johnny because he has plus abilities. For the ones that only have minus abilities, is the ability something that they want to go out of their way to kill? And vigilance would be like on the line of like, maybe like if they had the opportunity to, but it's not the end of the world if they have vigilance. But the +1 is gains 3 life, which is not amazing. Like, there is a minor life gain theme in the set, but gaining 3 life isn't super relevant. In some ways it gains 4 life because you're +1ing a Johnny, and that's a little more damage they have to throw at a Johnny. But you're mostly just using that to take up a Johnny, and honestly, if they can't kill your guy, that's a lot of life every turn that you're getting through, and if they're not getting through to kill a Johnny, they're in trouble anyway. -2 is put a might +1/+1 counter on each creature you control, and a loyalty counter on each other planeswalker you control, and that is very good. And that's the reason they have to kill a Johnny, because it grows your board. Your board is vigilant, so they keep getting in. Like if you have a few creatures on board, this comes down -2, -2. They're bigger all of a sudden, buffing up all your other planeswalkers, including your uncommon ones. Which I think we have to note about, like, also the fact that it puts a +1 counter on each creature you control, which obviously then turns any proliferate sources into very good. Because, there's like, especially in green-white, there's actually a fair few proliferate sources, but not as many things that actually have counters natively, and finding those ways to put counters on is amazing. But no, Johnny is very good. All he wants is 1 creatures, he gets in. This video is going to be so long because planeswalkers take so long to evaluate. But no, Johnny is honestly one of the better planeswalkers because it just synergizes with almost every theme in the set and is just a threat they have to deal with. Next we have Angrath's Rampage. Oh, another thing is, on the multicolored cards, is this card willing to go out of your way to splash for? Splashing is a little bit harder in the set. There's no guild gates that you're finding in packs and things like that. I think. I'm pretty sure there's not. There's none printed anyway, like as part of the set. But, I don't know, it's probably not one. In the past, they've done it where it's like, oh, they'll include lands from a different set, but probably not. I'm just like, I am 99% sure they're not, but there's that 1% chance that I'm wrong and I'm gonna eat my words, but yeah. But is it worth splashing for? A Johnny? Honestly, yes. Especially if you have if you have those proliferate creatures. Which is like, if you have a strong proliferate thing, a Johnny turns from just being a really good planeswalker to just backbreaking. Okay, Angrath's Rampage, which is a black and a red for sorcery, choose 1. Target player sacrifices an artifact, target player sacrifices a creature, or target player sacrifices a planeswalker. For the most part, you'll be using creature or planeswalker. And honestly, it's a fine removal spell in black-red. Black-red does have this sacrifice sub-theme. I mean, it is an edict, which, like, is weak if they have, like, a large, like, array of creatures and things like that. That said, there isn't really a huge go-wide theme, so that is a benefit. Especially if in black, like, and oftentimes, like, there will be many times where they just have one planeswalker, and just forcing them to be like, hey, sack that walker, is really nice, and just getting around their entire board and just be like, it's dead now. So, which is nice to just be like, yes, it's gone. That said, it is an edict effect and has all the inherent weaknesses of edict effects, and I wouldn't really go out of my way, especially with the level of fixing in this. It's solid removal, but it's not premium removal. Next up we have Bioessence Hydra, which is 3 green, blue for a 4/4 of trample. That enters with a +1 counter for each loyalty counter on planeswalkers you control. And whenever one or more loyalty counters are put into planeswalkers you control, put that many +1/+1 counters on Bioessence Hydra. Honestly, if you have just 2 other planeswalkers in your deck, this is so good. Like, granted, there is situations where you just have to play it, and yeah, it doesn't pass the vanilla test, it is a 5 mana 4/4 trample, but there's very few boards where you don't want a 4/4. Like, it's kind of one of those things where it's the vanilla test stops mattering as much, like, about at the point of 4/4, because it's like 4/4s are almost always relevant. And yeah, you don't want to be playing like 4 mana like 3/3s, or like 4 mana like 2/3s and things like that. But 5 mana 4/4, I'm fine with that. I'm perfectly fine with that. It just stops all the early game stuff, and just one or 2 planeswalkers, and obviously if it's more, it's amazing. This thing is just, it comes down, is a huge threat. If you have rare planeswalkers, grows even more. And it's big, it gets really big, and it has trample. So I think if you're just Simic and only have a couple planeswalkers, yeah, it's good. If you are more colors and actually have a fair few planeswalkers, it becomes very good, and then worth splashing for. So, yeah, no, it has a lot of high upside. If you don't have any planeswalkers or just like one planeswalker, it's fine if you don't have another 5-drop, but you're less happy with it. Next we have Casualties of War, which is 2 black, black, green, green. That cost alone makes it unsplashable. If you're black, green, you'll play this, like 6 mana, but otherwise no. Choose one or more. Destroy target artifact, creature, enchantment, land, planeswalker. Most of the time, like, in the worst case scenario, you're hitting creature, land, at which point it's just a fine 6 mana removal spell. Sure, it's high costed, which is rough, but the flexibility of being able to just hit any permanent type and hitting multiple permanent types is just so good. But the mana cost does make it so it's very restrictive, and you might even want to have a little bit. There's like a monolith that we'll go over later on, that maybe one of those might not be the worst thing to have if you're running this. But if anything, that mana cost makes it nicer, being like, yeah, don't slash this, but if you're in black-green, this is one of the better removal spells in the set for you. For the high-end ones, like there are cheaper, more efficient ones, but it just does a lot, and hits anything. Fun fact, removal spells that hit anything are good. Next we have Cruel Celebrant, which is white-black, which is a 1/2. Whenever Cruel Celebrant or another creature or planeswalker you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Okay, so it's a 2-color Zulaport Cutthroat that also hits planeswalkers. I think this is fine. Like I said, there's not really a super heavy aristocrats theme as far as I can tell, but and there's not a lot of good, like, massive token makers that, like, really make this thing good. But if you're in black, like, so you're not really wanting to splash this, but if you are in white-black, 2 mana 1/2, not great, but, you know what, it'll drain you for a little bit. It itself, when it dies, will drain, which is something. It has that life gain because there's a few cards that care about life gain, which just makes this fine. It's just fine. Not much else to say. Next we have Death Sprout, which is 1 black, black, green. For an instant, destroy target creature. Search your library for a basic land card, put it on the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle your library. It's murder for 1 more, that also gets you a land. This is very good. It's splashable if you are already base black and you're splashing the green. If you're in the green, the double black makes it just out of the question. Like, honestly, at 4 mana, like, the land is less relevant. It does get you to 6 mana the next turn if you need to. Which is nice. You can play a Colossal Dreadmaw, which is definitely in the set. I will believe it when it's printed. I see the cards for myself, and Colossal Dreadmaw isn't in the set. But, yeah, no, it's very good. I don't know what else to say. Yeah, there's not much to say. That it's like, it's murder, and it's not as good as murder, but it's still murder. Like, I'd rather have a little bit cheaper, less restrictive, sure, but yeah. Despark, which is white and a black for an instant. Exile target permanent with converted mana cost 4 or greater. This is very good. Like, most of the time, you're going to be spending your mana, your removal on big things anyway, and the fact that it's any permanent. Okay, it's non-land because lands don't have converted mana costs, but any permanent. Yeah, no, it's one of those things where it's like, if you have the fixing, which is hard to do in the set, you could splash for this, but you're not really wanting to splash for your removal unless you're desperate and like you're already splashing for something else. But otherwise, very good instant speed. You already want to remove big stuff anyway. Only 2 mana. Yes. Great art. Yeah. Domri, Anarch of Bolas. 1 red, green for 3 loyalty planeswalker. Creatures you control get +1/+0. First up, that perfectly fine. Like +1/+0. I mean, it's not amazing, but it's fine. It's like a nice little upside. +1 is add red or green, and creature spells you control, or creature spells you cast this turn cannot be countered. That can't be countered isn't super relevant, but it's not super. It's not. Bleh. It sometimes will come up, and like the ramp is nice, especially at 3 loyalty planeswalker. You are at the point where it's like you can do this like turn 4. You might use minus ability, and then like turn 5, add 1 loyalty planeswalker, cast an uncounterable Colossal Dreadmaw. So -2 is just target creature fights target creature you don't control. That's great. Like, he's removal, and obviously, all of a sudden, yes, very good. And the thing is, like, he's also a threat that you have to get rid of. And, like, you do have to have, like, creatures to back him up, but honestly, you have to have creatures anyway for, like, most planeswalkers to work, otherwise they just die. So yeah, no, like, he isn't particularly exciting anyway, but ramp, removal, and also just like a small anthem, he's just real solid. Yeah, no, if you have the ability to splash, I wouldn't go so much because it's like you're kind of just splashing for removal. But yeah, Domri is just solid. Domri's Ambush, which is red and a green for sorcery. Put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Then that creature deals damage equal to its power to target creature or planeswalker you don't control. Adds a counter, which is relevant for any effects of proliferate or things like that. And then it's just not a fight, it's just a direct deal damage to creature or planeswalker. So this is creature, it grows your creature, it's direct creature or planeswalker removal, A+. Like, this is like almost as unconditional removal as Gruul removal will get, as like fight effects will get, even though it's not a fight effect. But yeah, no, it's just very good. And it's one of those ones, if you're like in green, you have some fixing, and you just like have it to like splash. I would splash for this. Like, if I'm there, I'm not, my mana base isn't too strained. It's just such an efficient spell that's pretty unsituational unless, besides the situation of having a creature big enough. But yeah, no. Very good. Dophins Veto. White and a blue for an instant. This spell cannot be countered. Counter target non-creature spell. Okay, it's a negate that can't be countered. And negate is not playable in limited. And making a negate 2-colored does not help it be playable in limited. Don't play this card. Sorry, Dophin, but no. I veto Dophin's Veto. No. Dread Horde Butcher, which is black and a red for a 1/1 with haste. When it deals combat damage to a player or a planeswalker, put a +1/+1 counter on it. And when it dies, it deals damage equal to its power to any target. Okay, so it's 1 with haste, and this is one of those cards that's very good in your opening hand. Because it's like, okay, opening hand, and you're on the play. Or they don't have a 2-drop. But as soon as they have almost any drop, he's terrible. Or it's like, if you get in with him once, he's great. If you can't get in with him, like turn 2, you're in trouble, and he's honestly kind of irrelevant. That said, like, in that situation where he is, like, gets in, he's very good, because, yeah, no, it's just like, I think he's a fine 2-drop, and that's where he is. I wouldn't splash for him. He is powerful if he gets out of control, but there's equally so many boards where he is just dead on. And that makes me not like him very much. So, Undead Horde Butcher. Elite Guard Mage, which is 2 white-blue for 2/3 of flying. When it enters battlefield, you gain 3 life and draw a card. Turns out, a bad Cloud Blazer is still a good card. He's just solid. 4 mana, 2/3 flyer, which is like, fine. Replaces itself all of a sudden? Yes. Gain 3 life on top of that? Yes. Elite Guard Mage, very good. Doesn't do quite enough to warrant splashing, especially in a hard to splash set. But, yeah. Like, he's just a very solid, one of the better, like, 4-drops in the set. Yeah. Turns out creatures that replace themselves are good, especially when they also gain you life and are a pet threat in the air. And also, flyers, very relevant in this set, because sometimes you do just gotta chip in for 2 to take out a planeswalker. And that's super relevant. Into the God Eternals. 2 blue, black for sorcery. So, this is one that, not going to what it is. If you're in blue, splash it? Yes, very much so. Splash this card. If you're not blue and you're in black, no, don't do that. Okay, sorcery. Enter the God Eternals deals 4 damage to target creature, and you gain life equal to the damage dealt this way. Target player puts the top 4 cards of their library into their graveyard. Amass 4. So, I haven't talked about Amass yet. In short, I don't like Amass. You cannot look at Amass like getting a creature a lot of the time, because they don't, like, if you have a few Amass cards, you can look at that, but it's a little slightly worse than getting a creature. But this one is great. It's deals 4 to a creature, you gain life, the mill 4 isn't super relevant, and you get a 4/4 on top of that. Very good. 10 out of 10. Like, there's very little to talk about. Like, I'll talk about how I evaluate Mass later. But that set, like, on cards, but like the Amass, you could honestly take off Amass and be playable, and the fact that you also get 4 power on the board is even better. Like, this is one where, like, the Amass being slightly worse than the creature does not affect its playability. It's just a very solid removal spell. Feather the Redeemed. red, white, white for a 3/4 legendary with flying. When you cast an instant or sorcery spell that targets a creature you control, exile that card instead of putting it in your graveyard as it resolves. If you do, return to your hand at the beginning of the next end step. That line of text will sometimes be relevant if you have like a trick that you can just start looping, but for the most part you're playing this card as a 3-mana 3/4 flyer, which is great. She doesn't do quite enough that I'd really want to splash for her in a lot of times, just because it's easy to fall in the trap of, oh yes, I can splash very easily because I just came out of playing like guilds and allegiance. But remember, your fixing is not as good anymore. So you're not, this looks tempting, but I would not go out of my way for it. But yeah, no. It's like, if you have like a few tricks and you happen to have it, she becomes amazing. But otherwise, you're playing for us a 3/4 flying for 3, which is just, yeah, it's a 3/4 flying for 3. Next up we have Gleaming Overseer, which is 1 blue and a black for a 1/4 with a mass 1. So, starting enough to talk about a mass, where this is 2/5 worth of stats for 3, which is great. A mass is, if you don't know, it's essentially you put a +1/+1 counter on an army you control. But if you don't have one, you create a new 0/0 army and put that counter on it. So you'll always have one army outside of weird stuff, which isn't likely to happen in limited. But it keeps growing that one creature, which gives you this like one super large creature that is getting in. But it is a token. It is just one creature, which does make it very weak to balance, make very weak to removal and things like that. So that's why I say that a mass, you can't look at like it's getting, this is not fabricate 1. Like, you can't look at it that way. Okay, it's also not that because the counter thing was different, but it isn't you get a 1/1. It is that your big thing gets larger, which in a way kind of like gives your way to get like 2 for 1, but it's not really a 2 for 1, it's like a 1.5 for 1. But Gleaming Overseer is one of those cards that my opinion of amass is that you need, if you're going to make the amass deck, you need some of the uncommon things that will make your guy good. And this is one of them. This one, she gives your zombie tokens hexproof and menace. So, just 2 things. Like, the main problem of armies is that you get these really big creatures that have no evasion. And menace isn't the best form of evasion, but is good enough. And hexproof prevents it from, like, bounces and things like that. So, Gleaming Overseer, very good for that mass deck. And if you are in, like, Rakdos or Izzet, which are also kind of like the mass stuff is in Grixis, you would definitely, this is definitely one of those cards that you want to splash for, because it is one of the cards that makes the amass deck work. So, yeah. If you're not in that amass deck, you're not really looking to splash for this. Heartwarming Redemption, which is 2 red, white for an instant. Discard all the cards in your hand, then draw that many card +1. You gain life equal to the number of cards in your hand. You gain some card, like, it doesn't actually gain you card advantage because it just replaces itself. But it is one of those ones where you can get rid of lands like game and things like that. But it is 4 mana, but it is an instant, and it's just a bit expensive. You'll play this because it is amazing art. I love Gideon. Rest in peace, Gideon. I miss you already. I really like Gideon. I'm sad. But besides that, it's just fine. You're not splashing for this. Like, if you're gonna splash for a card advantage, splash for a better card advantage card. And you also shouldn't be splashing for card advantage. But it's just fine. But like, life gain is a benefit, but yeah. Next we have Huatli's Raptor, which is green-white for a 2/3 with vigilance. When it enters battlefield, proliferate. It's one of those cards that, like, when I talk about 2-drops and I evaluate 2-drops, is like, how is the 2-drop relevant in the late game? And this one that is, like, it's a 2-mana 2/3 vigilance that, like, you're not wanting to splash for this card, but if you're not those colors, this is just a great 2-drop, because if you play this on turn 2, you get a 2/3 vigilance for 2, which is great. And in the late game, you get to just have it come down. 2/3 vigilance is still relevant. Like, it's not amazing on the board, but it's not dead on board. And you get to proliferate all your stuff, adding counters to your walkers and other, like, any incidental +1s and counters you have on things. So, just very good. Like, obviously, you don't really want this outside of, you're not splashing with this, but yeah. Also, it's Huatli. Also, it's a dinosaur. And it's so happy to see its buddy, Colossal Dreadmaw, which is definitely in the set. Next up we have Invade the City, which is 1 blue-red for sorcery. Amass X, where X is the number of instant sorcery cards in your graveyard. Okay, so blue-red is blue-red spells. Fun fact, that's a common archetype for blue-red. And this is one where you really have to have, honestly, both the critical number of instant sorceries and some of the, at least like a few of like the things that make a mass good. Like, anything less than having 3 things in your graveyard is this card is bad, because then you're getting something that's worse than a thing. Even at 3, it's like you're getting like something that's slightly worse than a 3/3 for 3 on a cold card, and you're not really looking to do that. And honestly, having 3 instant sorceries in your graveyard is honestly kind of a tall order for limited. Like, the one benefit of mass is that, like, that is power and toughness that if you already have an army that kind of has haste. But even then, I'm not super into this card, because blue-red spells is obviously, we'll see that more when we actually look at blue and red. And there are some very good, like, blue-red spell cards, but the problem with those is that a lot of the blue-red spells that you want to play, you're already going to be playing, and you're going to be fighting with the other people and, like, other iterations of blue and red to get those cards. And then otherwise, it's just, like, limited is the format of creatures, and you can't afford to run too many non-creatures. That said, this is a card that works very well in multiples, and it is kind of like one of those cards that, like, can take a creature slot in some ways. That it's one of those things where I would not pick up this card early hoping to make the blue-red spells deck work, but it is one of those ones that if I'm already in that deck, it's a fine pickup and a fine inclusion, because you care. Honestly, this is better as a card that cares about instant sorceries, and more as a sorcery that is good for your other cards that care about instants and sorceries, mostly because it's a sorcery that functions as a creature, and that's kind of where I am at on this card, so I'm not super high on it. Next we have a Leyline Prowler, which is 1 black-green for a 2/3 with Death Touch and Lifelink, and just is a mana dork. You tap for any mana. I mean, I'm not splashing for this, but yeah, for the Gruul deck, not Gruul, Golgari deck. I mean, 3 mana 2/3 Death Touch Lifelink is a great combination of just like cost to like stats and 2 of my favorite keywords. And the fact that it also helps you splash other things that if you need it, like you're not splashing for this, but it can help you splash for other things. And also ramp you, like I said, like turn 3 this, turn 4 something else, turn 5 Colossal Dreadmaw. You're already in green, so he provides the second green for you. So your Dreadmaw friend is ready to go. And when you, like, a lot of mana dorks suffer from the problem of the relevant, not relevant late game, and the fact that it's a Death Touch creature to like take out a huge army that's swinging your way or something else, is just very relevant. So I quite like Leyline Prowler, but again, I'm not playing it outside of the Golgari deck. Living Twister, which is red, red, green for a 2/5. 3 mana 2/5. Yeah, I like that. I like this is just good stats. You may pay 1 red and discard a land card to deal 2 damage to any target. And you may pay green to return a tapped land you control to its owner's hand. This is honestly a bomb. It's also, obviously, double red means you're going to be in red already, but splash that green and try to get this card, because also the fact that its most relevant activated ability is red, but 3 mana 2/5, that's a relevant early game threat. Not really a threat, but like it will clog up the board. And just like late game, what's the worst thing to happen? Oh, you're drawing your lands. Oh no, I don't want to be drawing lands, but all your lands are shocks now. And that is amazing. Especially for like taking it, like chipping at planeswalkers and things like that. And the fact that it's also nice because some cards like this where it's like, oh, I know I have a Living Twister in my deck. I don't want to play out necessarily all my lands because, oh no, I don't want to like run with like accidentally play all my lands, draw my Living Twister, and then I have no fuel for my Twister. The fact that it also picks up your lands to do that is just very nice. And yeah, means you don't have to worry about that when you're like not playing around drawing your Living Twister. So yeah, it's also one of those ones at which you may not, like, even if you can cast it turn 3, you might want to hold on to it just so it doesn't bait out like an opponent's removal spell before you get any real value out of it. So yeah, no, Living Twister is extremely good. Especially since it's like, they have to deal with it. Like, it's like late game, like, yeah, sure, like if you're drawing your lands naturally, you only have so much time. Like it has that inevitability, but like, if your opponent is at anything less than 10 life, this will kill them in 2 turns, because you can just be like, okay, I'm just start picking my lands and throwing them at your face. For 3 mana apiece, I can just 2/2 damage to you, and I can do this for a few times and you're dead. So, Living Twister, one of the best rares in the set, in my opinion. Mayhem Devil, which is 1 black and red for a 3/3. Whenever a player sacrifices a permanent, Mayhem Devil deals 1 damage to any target. That's a very good effect, and there is kind of a sacrifice theme in Rakdos, and sometimes you'll be able to have this guy throw some damage around, which is good. And he's a 3/3, which makes him solid. Like, you're not really wanting this outside of his colors because he has some other thing, like, you're gonna want the sacrifice stuff anyway. But, yeah, no, Mayhem Devil's it's just decent. Like, there's nothing else to say. Like, he's passes the vanilla test. If you have any edict effects, it also turns into a ping, and yeah, it's not bad. Merfolk Skydiver, which is green and blue for a 1/1 flying. And when it enters battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control, which can just be on herself. So 2 mana, 2/2 flyer, so in. And you can pay 3 blue-green to proliferate. Again, it's a 2 mana creature that is irrelevant at all stages of the game. Yes. Largely because, okay, a 2 mana 2/2 flyer is rarely irrelevant on its own any stage of the game. The fact that it can put it on other things is just very relevant. Although, most of the time I think you'll probably just be putting the counter on itself. Just because getting bigger and stuff. And the fact that you can just pay 5 mana proliferate is just... that late game mana sink can just close out games. The proliferate is really nice for like recycling your recycling your spent out of like loyalty uncommon planeswalkers and things like that, and just doing a lot of work. But that said, I'm not splashing for this. You don't really want to splash for your 2-drops, and it is kind of expensive if you're not playing this on curve. Like, if it is an awkward one if you don't have the mana for it. Neoform, which is green and blue, as an instant question cost to cast a spell, sacrifice a creature. Search your library for a creature card with converted mana cost equal to 1 plus sacrifice creature's converted mana cost. Then put that card into the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter it, and then shuffle your library. I am not a huge fan of these sort of effects in Limited. Like I didn't like Vannevar in Limited, and I don't like this very much. It's just, you're losing a card. Yeah, you're tutoring something, but if it was an instant, I'd be more into this, and you're just not getting that much value in Limited. The only time I'd like maybe if you have a bomb, maybe you'll want to do that, but I am not really into Neoform in Limited. It's just putting you down a card, you're losing a creature, you're defending your deck of creatures, which really isn't the thing you want to be doing, and yeah. Like, I wasn't big on Vannevar, and I'm even less big on Neoform, because Vannevar at least had a body. Nicobolus, Dragon God, with blue, black, 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 red. Needless to say, do not play this unless you're already being base black. Nicobolus Dragon God has all loyalty abilities of all other planeswalkers on the battlefield. That is very good. It's very situational, but the fact that it's just very flexible is nice, and honestly isn't even relevant to his power level based on the other things. +1, you draw a card. Each opponent exiles a card from their hand or permanent they control. -3, destroy target creature or planeswalker. -8, each opponent who doesn't control a legendary creature or planeswalker loses the game. There's very little +A. Like, I could talk about like, oh, this planeswalker is very good if you can cast him, and that's true. Make sure you have the fixing to cast him. Prioritize that if you pick it up, because it is a card that will win you the game not too quickly. Like, obviously you have to have some amount of board state to make it very good, but be able to protect him when he comes down. But he's very good. It's Bolus. They haven't printed a Bolus that hasn't been just busted. I don't count the Planeswalker deck one. Yeah, no, it's Bolus. It's Bolus. Enough said. Don't need to talk about him. Niv Mizzet Reborn. White, blue, black, red, green. For 6/6 flying. When he enters the battlefield, reveal top 10 cards of your library. For each color pair, choose a card that's exactly those colors from among them. Put the chosen cards in your hand on the rest of your bot library in a random order. Very good card, very good stats, very good ability. Uncastable. Like, yes, at the pre-release, you can cast him, you can try to cast him for memes and things like that and live the dream. But realistically, if you want to win games, you shouldn't play this card. It's just, there's not quite enough fixing in this set. And maybe you have that dream situation where you get all the fixing you need and have it already, and you might be able to justify playing Niv Mizzet Reborn. But realistically, you should not run this card. There just simply isn't enough fixing in the set. And yeah, that's what I have to say. It's just cool effect, powerful effect. 5 color does not work. Oath of Kaya. 1 black red or 1 black white for legendary enchantment. When there's battlefield, deal speed damage at any target and you gain 3 life. That alone, and normally is how you evaluate these oaths in most formats, because the Planeswalker class doesn't matter, is very good. I mean, it's fine. Like, sorcerer speed, deal 3 damage at any target, gain 3 life. It's good. Like, hits Planeswalkers, hits players if you need to, it drains them, 6-point life swing if you need to. But yeah. And whenever an opponent attacks a Planeswalker you control with 1 or more creatures, Oath of Kaya deals 2 damage to that player, and you gain 2 life. Yeah. No, it's just... If you're in white black, you'll run this thing because it's a solid removal spell. And that ability, like, they can't attack your stuff, your Planeswalkers forever. And, like, some of them will be threats. And if you're in white black, you'll play this card because it's a removal spell and it's decent. If you have good Planeswalkers and you're already in one of these colors, this is a card I would splash for, just because that effect is very taxing on your opponent, and just like gives you so much incremental advantage, as well as still being a decent removal spell. So yeah. Also, yay, we get to see more Kaya in the future. Yay! Pledge of Unity. 1 green, white. for an instant. Put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. Gain life for each 1 life for each creature you control. Blue-white does have this like strong proliferate theme, and this is a very good thing to help start enabling that. Because, like I said, one of the harder things is to put counters on your creatures. And normally I'm not a big fan of these charge effects, but the fact it's a counter, it has some life gain, which is relevant. And it's at instant speed, so you can use it as a trick and things like that. Makes me just really like this card in that green-white deck. Obviously it's best if you have those proliferate payoffs, but even without that, I really like Pledge of Unity. Like, I'm not splashing for it, but yeah, no, I really like it. Also, it's a Lesnian card, so obviously it's good. Rel Storm Conduit, which is 2 blue-red for a 4 loyalty planeswalker. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, he deals 1 damage to target opponent or planeswalker. Obviously, the ability very good in that blue-red Spellslinger deck, which is obviously what you're doing because you're probably playing him in a blue-red Spellslinger deck. His +2, and a +2 is actually kind of big in this thing because like he's coming down with 6 loyalty, which is a tall order to take down. Scry 1. Also the +1 that hits his passive that hits planeswalkers is really nice for them to just chip away at them. But +2 Scry 1, like, you're not drawing a card, but that's decent card selection while making him hard to kill. His -2 is whenever you cast your next instant sorcery spell this turn, copy that spell, and you may choose new targets. Rel, obviously, you want to be in that Spellslinger deck, so you're probably not splashing with this just because you're probably already the deck that wants this the most is in blue-red. But you have to, like, your opponent has to take this out. He takes up very quickly. He finds you your like removal and things like that you want to be casting twice. Whenever you do that, you're pinging your opponent's face and planeswalkers. He's very good in that deck. And I feel like I'm saying that a lot, but like a lot of the good gold cards are good because they're gold cards. And because we're not in guild set anymore, like they're a bit more pushed because it isn't just like filler for that deck. But yeah, no, he's just like, he's very specific in the deck he wants to be in, but that blue-red deck is already kind of like that deck you want him in. So, yeah. Yeah. Because it's also one of those things where it's like, even if you don't actually copy anything with him, like you're only just scrying for a few turns, he's gained you 8 life. And yes, your opponent doesn't know that you don't have anything to cast with him, and you're just doing that. And you're just like, the worst case scenario is you play this and like your opponent wastes some time trying to kill him before you can do something bad, and you also got to dig for whatever you're doing and things like that. Or even if you don't necessarily have that critical mass of instant sorcery spells, he's still that threat that your opponent has to deal with. Also, one thing that's nice about a lot of these rare ones is that they don't have these ultimates that people get blinded by, which almost makes them better to evaluate because you can look at them for what they are, which is, don't look at the ultimates on planeswalkers. Just don't. Okay, Rel's Outburst, which is 2 blue-red for an instant. Rel's Outburst does 3 damage to any target. Look at the top 2 cards of your library, put one in your hand and the other in your graveyard. This is just a very lightning bolt on top of like replaces itself with like some better like card selection. What's not to love? Very little. I won't splash for this because again, like I don't, especially in this set, you're really only going to be splashing for bombs, and this isn't quite bomb level, but it's very good in that sense. Rolesque Apex Hybrid, which is 2 green-green-blue for 4/5 for flying and trample. 5 mana 4/5 flying trample. And when it enters battlefield, put 2/+1 counters on another target creature you control. So it comes in as 5 mana, 6/7 worth of power. 4 of which in the air. And when he dies, proliferate, then proliferate. Again, it's green, so you're obviously going to be base green, but also since your base green, splashing is a little bit easier. So I like it a lot. And like I would splash for this. Because also like the other green decks you're playing is like if you're playing green-white and you're already kind of in that proliferate deck that wants these things, like moving it into more of like a Bant thing is very good. And yeah, no, he's just, there's not much to say. Like, he is a mythic legendary creature. He's going to be good. Yeah. Role reversal, which is red, blue, blue, red for sorcery. Exchange control of 2 target permanents that share a permanent type. It's a cheaper switcheroo that's a little bit more flexible, except in mana cost, which is fine, and it's like it's a good effect, but it isn't quite at the point of the effect that's like, yes, I want to splash for this. It's just solid. Yeah. Notably, this is actually one of the few cards in Limited that you can get 2 armies with, because you trade something else for their army while you already have one, so you could have 2 armies, and it's one of the only ways you can get 2 armies in Limited in the set. But yeah, it's just like, Switcheroo is a solid card. I mean, it's a good card. You give away your dinky, like, 1 power army and get their big thing. Or trade for their, like, rare walker. It's like, oh yeah, here, have my uncommon walker that I've used all their loyalty on except 1. Have fun with it. So, yeah. Rebel Belt Riders, which is 1 green red for an 0/4 with haste. Whenever it attacks, it gets +X/+O until end of turn, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. Obviously, it's not the best on defense, but it is still a 3-mana 0/4, which blocks decently enough, even if it's just like a wall. And it does require other creatures, but it's fine. You'll run this as a solid 3-drop in your Gruul deck, and you'll be fine with it. And sometimes you'll be able to just like hit some damage out of nowhere, but yeah, not much to say. I do like the comment of, these look like the most bored rioters ever. I don't remember who said that on Twitter. Next we have Soldering Blaze, which is 2 red, white. Each creature deals damage to itself equal to its power. I love board wipes in Limited. This one is a tad too situational for me. Like, obviously there's this thing where you like maneuver your way to like make sure it like kills like your stuff more than their stuff. But honestly, it's often just like a lot of just chance that it will be that way. So I think it's fine. Like, if you're in that like Boros deck, like, it isn't the worst thing to be running, but I'm not huge on this. Like, it isn't the auto-include that most other wipes are. It's just, yeah, like, it's kind of like a Citywide Bust was in Guild Submitted, where it's like, yeah, it's solid, and obviously, like, there's the decks where you bring this in from the sideboard and it just destroys their deck, but yeah, it's fine. Soren, Vengeful Bloodlord, which is another thing is for Soldering Blaze. I have noticed that also a lot of the creatures in the set, with like armies being one of the few exceptions, do have higher toughness than power, so it doesn't even kill that many of the creatures. Soren, Vengeful Bloodlord, which is 2 white, red, black. I cannot say colors today, can I? For Legendary Planeswalker, Soren, which is a 4 loyalty Planeswalker. You can +2 him. Oh, also, as long as it's your turn, creatures and Planeswalkers you control have lifelink. +2 is he deals 1 damage to target player or Planeswalker, which also gains you 1 because he has lifelink. -X, return target card with current mana cost X from your graveyard to the battlefield. That creature is a vampire in addition to its other types. I mean, Soren is just very good. Like, again, it's like, what does it do? It doesn't really have removal, which isn't, like, the thing, but it doesn't have card advantage, but in a way, I mean, it does, because it gets things back from your graveyard, and takes out Planeswalkers, it gains you life, because there is like some life gain payoffs, like 1 or 2 in the set, which if you have those, giving all your creatures lifelink is a very powerful effect. And yeah, no, and reanimation. And that reanimation effect alone just means that they have to deal with him. So he'll gain you life in that way too. Next we have Soul Diviner, which is blue-black for a 2/3. With tap, move a counter from target an artifact, creature, land, or planeswalker you control. Draw a card. First of all, it's just a 2-mana 2/3, and it passes the test of, is it a 2-mana, is it a 2-drop that is good at turn 2? Yes it is, 2-mana 2/3, I like that. And the fact that it's like, unless you recycle your old, big, your spent, uncommon planeswalkers, or even if you have a rare one that, you're taking up and you don't mind sacrificing them to just draw a card, is very good. Well, not sacrificing, but, sacrificing from loyalty to them. Or if you just want to, shave some the top off of an army you control, all decent things. Just to get some card advantage just makes this very solid. So, yeah, no, it's a card draw engine that's very nice. But like I said, you don't really want to splash for card advantage, so don't splash for this. Storev, Devkarin Lich, which is 1 black-green for a 5/4 with trample. It's a 4-mana 5/4 trample for solid. And whenever it deals combat damage to a player or planeswalker, return to your hand target creature or planeswalker card from your graveyard that wasn't put there this combat. So, notably, if he dies, trampling over, you can't get him back, which is unfortunate, but, yeah, no, he's a good body that recurs stuff, which is just, overall, very solid. I cannot fault Storev at all. He's just, yeah. And he's of the power level which I would be in starting thinking of, yeah, I'd splash this if I am base black. Having these double costed ones really makes it that decision a lot easier, being you already have to be heavily in this specific color, which helps with that a little bit. Tamiyo, Collector of Tales, which is 2 blue-green for a 5 loyalty planeswalker, who's already amazing because she's Tamiyo, and Tamiyo's awesome. Okay, I should look at what Tamiyo does. Spells and abilities your opponent's control can't cause you to discard cards or sacrifice permanents. That is sometimes relevant. It isn't the most relevant thing. If you're playing against, the Rakdos, that has, sacrifice stuff a lot. Sure, yeah. But, for the most part, it isn't super relevant. +1. Choose a non-land card name. Reveal the top 4 cards of your library. Put all cards with that name, chosen name from among them into your hand and the rest into your graveyard. It's limited, so you might want to know what that is. Notably, you might want to actually write down a deck list if you have Tamiyo, so you can refer to it, know what cards you have in your deck. Her -3 is, so, oftentimes she isn't quite drawing a card, but, limited by turn 4, your deck's probably down to, 25 cards or less, and top 4 cards, 1 in 5, a little bit over, 1 in 5, and declining chance it'll hit a card that you're naming, so not the worst odds, but it's not drawing a card, which is notable. Her -3 is return a card from your graveyard to your hand, which is drawing a card in a way. She's fine. Despite all my things being oh yes, it's Tamiyo, you don't really want to splash for her. All of her stuff isn't super relevant. Oftentimes they'll be using her as a regrowth that they have to deal with to gain some life, otherwise they'll eventually regrowth something else. And sometimes you'll hit something that'll be cool. Yeah, no, it's Tamiyo. Woohoo, Tamiyo. Oh, I did not read that. Put all cards of the chosen name from among them into your hand and the rest into your graveyard. So then you can -3 to return from graveyard. That makes more sense. So she also fills your graveyard for that. At which point, she almost becomes kind of a bit of a liability, because milling yourself 4 every turn in limited puts you on a very fast clock. So, that actually kind of makes me less keen on Tamiyo. Tamiyo just feels like a very surefire way to lose quickly, that you'll reach the point where you just can't plus her anymore. Like, you can plus her like once, maybe twice, and you'll be fine, but after that, you're just not wanting to. That said, if you have Board Present, you plus her once, and then you reglyph twice, referring to things, but then it requires a lot of things to go right, and not have her get attacked. Yeah, I'm not high on Tamiyo. Yeah, I'm sorry, Tamiyo. Despite my jokes at BNA, I don't think you're playable. It's just too much of a liability. I don't want to be running a Planeswalker that'll likely kill me. My one exception is if you have the Jace that acts as also as a Laboratory Maniac, then Tamiyo is great sidekick for Jace in that deck, because she also can get you back Jace, and you can play Jace and do all that. But yeah. Sorry, Tamiyo. You're just too much of a liability. It's Teferi, Time Raveler. 1 blue, white for 4 loyalty Planeswalkers. Each opponent can only cast spells anytime they could cast a sorcery. So, notably, like, the most things, like, they can't counter spells if they're playing blue. Although that said, there aren't that many counter spells that are super relevant in this format. I mean, there's some. And they can't use combat tricks on your turn, which is just nice peace of mind. +1 is, until next turn, you may cast sorcery spells as if they had flash. Notably, this does not let you cast creature spells as if they had flashed. But that's fine, like, it lets you hold up stuff, I guess. In -3, return up to 1 artifact, creature, or enchantment card to its owner's hand, draw a card. I love it. Like, even if you play this, even if like he dies the next turn, and you played 3 mana to balance a creature to their hand and draw a card, 100% into that. Like, that's just very good value, and that is a balance spell that I would play for 2 colors with that cost. And if he gets to stick around, like, maybe you'll get some benefit from, like, casting sorcery spells with flash, and eventually you might be able to bounce another thing, and it locks down your opponents from doing tricky stuff. Yeah, no, I really like Teferi. Like, just real solid Planeswalker. Like, I wouldn't splash for him, because he is, at the end of the day, a bounce spell, but yeah. 10th District Legionnaire. Red, white for 2/2 with haste. Whenever you cast a spell that targets her, put a +1/+1 counter on her, and then scry 1. So, obviously, 2 mana 2/2 haste. Solid. Like, not the most relevant thing late game, but the fact that, like, there was this, like, she has heroic in a way, and getting a +1/+1 counter for any random proliferate stuff you had, although Boros doesn't have that much proliferate, just gives a little bit more extra utility to your combat tricks and things like that. Is she amazing? No. But if you're on Boros, she's probably doing what you already want to be doing, which is turning sideways and kicking face in and getting to filter out your top decks is kind of what you want to do. So, yeah. Time Wipe. 2 blue, white, white, blue. Return a creature you control to its owner's hand, and then destroy all creatures. Now, this is a board wipe I'm into. Its board wipes are very good, like especially ones that kill everything, and especially one that saves one of your things that you recast later. Very good. It's also one of those ones where it's like, you always are like, oh, do I really want to play my bomb? I might want to wipe the board. But you can play your bomb and still wipe the board later. Like, draw your wipe later, still wipe the board, and your guy's safe. So yeah, Time Wipe is good. Very good. Also, I would splash for this in white, because it's just that powerful of a board wipe. Just letting you shape how you just get such huge board advantage and such a huge amount of card advantage with this thing. Like, also, obviously, as always, board wipes get worse the second game once they know that it exists and things like that, but yeah, you can just blow people out. Next up we have Tulsimir, Friend to Wolves, which is 2 green, green, white for 3/3. Win until some of your friend wolves enters battlefield. Create Foja, friend to elves. A legendary 3/3 green and white wolf creature token. So you get 6 power worth of creatures across 2 creatures for 5 mana, like that. Whenever a wolf enters battlefield under control, you gain 3 life, and that creature fights up to 1 target creature you don't control. So he comes in, he gets a friend, he gains 3 life, and Foja fights someone. He's good. He's just real solid. Like, there aren't tons of wolves in this. Like, yeah, if you also have Arlen in your deck, like, obviously it's like, oh, very good. But just real solid creature, like, body. I wouldn't splash for him, really. He's just a good body. And a removal spell rolled into 1. But yeah. Also, he is Celestia. And as we all know, the Celestia are the best. Also, he has a dog friend. Who else in the set has a dog friend? I'm pretty sure there's no one else in the set with a good dog friend. No one at all. It'd be a shame, because it'd be really neat if there was more people with good dog friends in the set. Next we have Tyrant's Scorn, which is black for an instant. Just choose 1. Destroy target creature with converted mana cost 3 or less. Return target creature to its owner's hand. Yeah, I mean, I'm not splashing with this, but it's a decent spell. Like, it's a 2 mana 2 color unsummon, which isn't great. It's a 2 mana 2 color, like, what is that? Not Reefer Ambush from Ixalan block, but like the one from like Ixalan itself that like was the destroy. What's its name? I don't remember, but it's there. Vanquish the Weak. Just like it's 1 less mana, but it's not great. But the fact that it's 2, it's very flexible. Love that. Like sometimes you just gotta kill the small thing, or you just gotta like get that tempo play mid to late game, and you're totally happy with that. So I quite like Tyrant's Scorn, but again, not quite the power level where I'd want to be splashing for it. Widespread Brutality, which is 1 black, red for sorcery. Amass 2. Then the army you amass deals target damage equal to its power to each non-army creature. This is one where this is one of the payoffs for an amass deck, that if you have an amass deck and you can just like wipe the board, make your guy bigger, and then swing into this now cleared board, this is amazing finisher, great card advantage, but you have to already be in that deck. If you're in blue-red, I would splash for this, just because it is it's instant sorcery to help with that, and it's not as hard to splash. If you're in blue-black, it's harder to splash for. And I wouldn't, because it's double red. But, yeah, no, this is just one of those very good finishers for the amass deck, but it isn't really insane for the amass deck. It isn't insane unless you have that amass. If you don't have the amass thing, then it's very medium. Like, it's a small board wipe that also gives you a 2/2, which is fine, but it's not the great finisher that the other one is. Okay, we're on to the hybrid planeswalkers, which, as with hybrid cards, remember that these can go into either deck, the color that they're in. You don't have to be in both these colors. I mean, obviously it's better to cast them, but these are our first uncommon planeswalkers, so they all have only minus abilities. So first up we have Angrath, Captain of Chaos, which is 2 Rakdos, for 5 level 2 planeswalker with creature control have menace. Let's first talk about that. Is that something that they'll go out of your way to kill? I mean, yeah, like menace is relevant, but they'll kill you if it's open, so, which is something to note. But also, creatures having menace is a good ability that you want to keep around, because that just like makes your board very, like, it is just good. Like, one creature having menace is just like annoying, but like having all your creatures having a menace just makes blocking very difficult for your opponent. His -2 is amass 2, which isn't quite make a 2/2, but so he makes a body to protect himself when he comes down. So yeah, So he makes a 2/2 menace with him, or grows your army otherwise and gives it menace. Like, he's fine. Like, I would like to be in that amass deck first. But just the fact that, like, even if you're, like, generally, if you are any sort of aggressive strategy, giving all your stuff menace just does really help pushing damage through. And it is something they, like, a deck does need to deal with, because if the game goes long and Angrath is left on the board, as your side of this board just builds up, it's going to be really hard to deal with. You get 2 activations in the MS2, so if you get him both, he does come down to, like, overall is like 4 power worth of stuff, at which point he's a 4-mana 4/4, which is honestly perfectly fine, and I like that. So, I quite like Angrath. Ashiok, Dreamrender, who is 1 Dimir for a 5 loyalty planeswalker. Spells and ability to use your opponent's control can't cause their controller to search their library. Target player puts the top 4 cards of their library into their graveyard, then exile each opponent's graveyard. That is a very specific ability. Okay, the search one is honestly irrelevant. Great for commander and things like that. Could be cool there. But I think this is a good sideboard card for 2 things. One, if your opponent has the God Eternals or Ilrog, which tuck themselves when they die, and Ashiok does let you mill those and then exile them, actually killing them for good. It's one of the few cards that can actually get rid of those things for good. Or if you're both in very grindy decks, because forcing your opponent to mill, like, if you get all the activations of you're milling 20 cards, then you probably won't get all of that in, but that can speed up that process very quickly, and there's not that much graveyard stuff, so the exiling your graveyard isn't as important, but there is that inevitability that it gives by just, like, thinning your opponent's deck and just getting rid of things. So Ashiok, I think, could be very good in that kind of, like, control mirror, but you don't really want to be main decking Ashiok. Next we have Dovin, Hand of Control. Also, that stack ability is so irrelevant that it's not one of those things where it's like, unless your opponent is worried about milling out, they have no reason to kill Ashiok. Which is why it's that control mirror where it's like, you're wanting Ashiok to finish the game, rather than that. But yeah. Dovin, Hand of Control, who's 2 in Azorius for a 5 loyalty planeswalker. Artifact, instant sorcery spells your opponent's control cost 1 more to cast. Well, I mean, it can slow them down, but it isn't the end of the world. Like, that isn't an ability where they're going to go out of the way to kill him. -1, prevent all damage that we be dealt to and by target permanent and opponent controls. So Dovin, Hand of Control is good if you're in a control deck that's slower and wants to, like, slow down a big guy. He's not good on the offense because it's not like it prevents just its damage, so it essentially gives them a very good blocker if you're going to need to swing in after that. But if you want to, like, slow down, like, a guy, it works there. So Dovin, Hand of Control is, like, good in that deck, and you're fine. And like, obviously, if you have any proliferate sources that are, like, repeatable, like, it's very good to be able, like, just if you're able to, like, keep that going. And he has a lot of activations on him to, like, just slow down an aggressive deck for you to, like, get high. So if you're in that deck, he's fine. Like, if you just want to, like, if you're the deck that wants to slow down the game, I quite like that. Otherwise, he just doesn't quite do as much if you were trying to be more on the beatdown. So, yeah. Next we have Huatli, the Sun's Heart, which is 2 in a Selesnya for a 7 loyalty planeswalker. Each creature you control assigns combat damage equal to its toughness rather than its power. And -3, you gain life equal to the greatest toughness among creatures you control. I mean, I love this card for my deck for Big Butts Life Gain aggro, because this is, like, the perfect card for Big Butts Life Gain aggro. But making your creatures fight with butts, like, maybe you have that relevant deck where you just happen to have, like, a bunch of high toughness creatures, but that's so situational. And, like, gaining life like that could be a lot of life gain, potentially, but you don't want to play pure life gain spells in limited, so that's kind of what she is. So I am not a huge fan of Huatli in this set. So, sorry, Huatli. At least you brought your Colossal Dreadmaw to the set. That's definitely there. Kaya, Bane of the Dead, who is 3 Orzhov for 7 loyalty Planeswalker. Your opponents and permanents your opponents control with hexproof can be the targets of spells and abilities as though they did not have hexproof. That's not super relevant. Like, there's a few things that give hexproof that don't get around. But you're not playing that for that ability. You're playing it for the ability of -3, exile target creature. This is this is a 6 loyalty Planeswalker that gets to exile 2 creatures. Kaya is very good, and yeah, no, you kill their biggest thing, which makes it harder for them to attack it, and you kill another thing next turn. Very good, Kaya. You do you. You're doing great. Oh yeah. This is nuts. Like, the triple color requirement is rough. Like, obviously, ideally you want to be an Orzhov, but you don't have to. If you are heavily in one of those other colors. So, yeah. Love you, Kaya. You're very good. It's like, things like, normally I'm just like, yeah, fine, that's fine removal for like your 6 mana, like, limited removal spells. But she's 2. And that just is like, ooh, I don't mind paying 6 mana at all anymore. So, yeah. Kiora, Behemoth Beckoner, which is 2 and a Simic for a 7 mana Planeswalker. Loyalty Planeswalker. Whenever a creature with power 4 or greater in a battlefield under your control, draw a card. That's a very good ability. And there is kind of this, like, ferocious sub-theme that, like, in this set, which has honestly been, in recent sets. Because M19 had that too, with, like, Sarkhan's Unsealing and things like that in Goreclaw. Which just cares about big power creatures. And obviously if you're in green, you're going to have big creatures anyway. So that's just a really great card advantage engine that your opponents are going to want to kill. And the untap can either be ramping yourself out to, like, a good creature, like a Colossal Dreadmaw, that will also draw you a card. Or, like, attacking one of your big stuff and, like, then untapping them to protect her so you can continue your card draw engine. Yeah, just very good. What is that card? There's an enchantment that does that I run in Commander that I don't remember its name. But yeah, no, she's very good. I like her quite a bit. Like, if you're just in blue and you don't have as big creatures, obviously it's not as good. But if you are, like, in green, you're going to have those big creatures. It's gonna be relevant. And even if you don't as much, like, she does ramp you a little bit. And, like, give yourself vigilance when you need to. And she's hard to kill. So, even if you only get, like, 1 replacement on her before she's killed, like, that she's gained you life, replaced herself. And I like that. Nahiri, Storm of Stone. 2 Boros for a 6 loyalty Planeswalker. As long as your turn, creature you use control have first strike, and equip abilities you activate cost 1 less to activate. There's no equipment in the set. Don't worry about that equip stuff. Okay, giving us a first strike is a not bad ability for, like, for the offensive, but I'm not willing to pay that card for that. Minus X though. She does the X damage to her type creature. I quite like her. Like, if you need to, she is just like 4 mana sorcery, deals 6 damage to target type creature, and I'm fine with that. And if you do less and all of a sudden your attacks are a lot better, yeah, no. Like, I don't think she's insane, but she's a solid removal spell, and with some extra utility if you're not using the full extent of her abilities. So yeah. Saheeli, Sublime Artificer, which is 1 is it for a 5 loyalty Planeswalker. Her passive is her strength, which is whenever you cast a non-creature spell, create a 1/1 servo artifact creature token. It's a young pyromancer. Fun fact, a 3 loyalty young pyromancer is still a good card. Sure, -2 is target artifact you control becomes a copy of target another artifact or creature you control until end of turn, except it's an artifact in addition to other types, so she can turn her servos into, say, like, I don't know, if you're like in a blue-green deck and you're casting this, then you can turn your servo into a Colossal Dreadmaw. You can do that, and it's really good. But honestly, I'd be like hesitant to like bring her too low, just because main thing is if you're in that blue-red spells deck, and again, you really want her to be, you want to be in that blue-red spells deck already for this card, but she's an amazing payoff for that blue-red spells deck. So, yeah, no, I really like her for that deck. Outside of the deck, she's not as good because you're just not casting as many like non-creature spells, and you need that to use her second ability and things like that. But yeah, in that deck, she's one of the like super great payoffs for that Spellslinger deck. We have Samut, Tyrant Trasher, Smasher, which is 2 Gruul. Creatures you control have haste. And -1, target creature gets +2/+1. It gains haste until end of turn. Scry 1. I really like her. Like, giving her, like, if you're playing, like, big stuff, but if also red X or green X, giving them haste is good. Like, also just giving them, making them bigger and just getting them in, and also just that added scry to help set up your next draws. Like, your opponent wants to kill this thing so you're not, like, slamming a Colossal Dreadmaw and turning them sideways, which is definitely in the set. Don't tell me it's not in the set. I will ban you from my channel's comments. Don't break my heart. Yeah, no, I mean, she's, like, if it didn't have the scry, I'd be very medium on her, but the fact that she also sets up your future draws, and, like, it's, like, I think, like, the community consensus is it's like somewhere between 2 and 3 scries is equal to drawing a card. And like honestly, like getting 2 to 3 activations is probably on average what you're gonna get out of Samut. And as well as talk that, like also just pushing your creatures through for some extra damage. So yeah, Samut. I like her a lot. Vraska, Swarm's Imminence. 2 Golgari for a 5 loyalty Planeswalker. Whenever a creature you control with Death Touch deals damage to a player or Planeswalker, put a +1 counter on that creature. That is very specific, almost to, like, you're not going to have that many creatures of Death Touch, except for the ones that she creates, which is -2, create a +1/1 black assassin creature token of Death Touch, and whenever this creature deals damage to a Planeswalker, destroy that Planeswalker. Essentially, she's a 4 loyalty Planeswalker that like makes 2/1/1 to these like assassins of Death Touch, and I don't mind that. Like, the chart's over 2 turns and can get disrupted, but she does protect herself because she creates a Death Toucher, and Death Touchers are also just solid and good Planeswalker removal. And even if they don't have Planeswalkers, you can send them at their face, and then they get bigger and are bigger threats that they have to like deal with. And I'll pay 4 loyalty for 2 assassins that will grow themselves. So yeah, I like Death Touchers a lot unlimited, especially since there's just like with like armies and stuff going around, just makes them really like just having these like, they're not evasive, but like it is both good defensively and offensively, and I like it. She's not quite removal, but she creates a very relevant board state. Another thing is also to note that the difference between the Planeswalkers that actually create creatures, so they can kind of take creature slots on your curve, and the ones that aren't. Like, Vraska can take the creature slot on your curve. Samut doesn't, and make sure you're not running into the situation where you're not running into critical mass of creatures. So that is one thing to note when you're building your decks, that make sure you have enough creatures. Limited is the format of creatures, have enough. Also, another thing that I just remembered on Sealy, if you are, like, also, there is kind of like a dedicated, like, Super Friends deck in this set, which is cool. She is an instant sorcery, so she is also non-creatures, where if you're in blue-red spells, or Super Friends, where because your Planeswalkers will also trigger it, then she's a little bit more playable, because she's just a Super Friend herself, and also she triggers off of other Planeswalkers, so that there's that there for that proliferate Super Friends kind of build of it. But that's just something to note, that it isn't outright, don't play this unless you're on blue-red spells. But don't play it if you're not in one of those two decks. Okay, next up we have our artifacts. First up we have Firemind's Vessel, which is a 4-mana artifact. When it enters battlefield tapped, and you may tap it to add 2 mana of different colors. I think it's kind of cute. That's like 2 mana of different colors, because usually it's like 2 mana of any color, or 2 mana of any one color. But this one is specifically must be different. I mean, it's a 4-mana rock, and I'm not super big on these. So it's like, if you're wanting to splash for something, or if you do have one of the bigger things, like we haven't seen too many like super expensive things you're wanting to cast, but if you have things you need to splash for, I like this a lot. If you don't, I'm not running this just to do that. You want to be doing more stuff for your 4-mana slot. You have to have a bomb or a reason to be wanting to cast this. God Pharaoh's Statue, which is a 6-mana legendary artifact. Spells your opponent's cast cost 2 more to cast, and at the beginning of your end step, each opponent loses 1 life. Okay, that first part, like, it's one of those things where, like, if you cast this on 6, it's fine. Like, you can, like, strand some cards in your hand, but you did just pay 6 mana for an artifact that does not affect the board state. And I also don't want to be paying 6 mana for half of a ill-gotten inheritance. I just don't think this is playable. Like, you don't want to be playing 6 mana for an artifact that does not affect the board state. Yeah, there will be the situations where your opponent plays this against you and a few cards are like stranded in your hand. But they also just paid 6 mana that could have been spent for like a Colossal Dreadmaw that would have been honestly more effective at closing out the game. And that's too slow of a clock. It isn't ill-gotten inheritance, which I did misevaluate when I went into my Raptor Legion set review, but this one I am sure is not good. Unlike ill-gotten inheritance, which I said wasn't good, but ended up being good. This one I'm sure, for 6 mana, for half of 1, not good. Yeah. Next we have Guild Globe, which is a 2-mana artifact that when you enter this battlefield, draw a card. You may pay 2 and sacrifice it to add 2 mana of different colors. Man, I wish this was just Prophetic Prism, but it's fine. Like, if you need to splash again, you might run it, but it's one of those ones where it's like, you're really gonna want to be splashing. Because, like, yeah, you're paying 2 mana to, like, cycle it, but it's, like, 1 off, and you have to make sure you draw it, and it's kind of awkward, and it's fine, but you just have to have a reason to run it. Like, it's also not premium splashing either. Like, it doesn't ramp you or anything, so, I mean, that is a solid for me on Guild Globe. Iron Bully, which is a 3-mana 1/1 with Menace. When it enters battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. So, at worst case scenario, it is a 3-mana 2/2 Menace. I mean, it's not the worst. I mean, it's the minimum scenario. So it's like, yeah, no, it's like, normally I don't like these like artifact creatures up below curve, but if you're in that deck that actually has a lot of access to proliferate, and you just need a creature to like fill out your curve, like you don't have too many 3-drops, like this is a fine 3-drop. Like if you're like manipulating those counters to get more of it, I quite like this. Like, it's not premier, like it's not a good card, but it's just like, most of the time I'm very unhappy with running these cards, and this one I'm just fine with. Granted that you're in that deck that has access to proliferate and stuff like that. So, yeah, no. I'm not supposed to say. It's just, yeah, solid. Next up we have Mana Geode, which is a 3-mana artifact. When it enters battlefield, scry 1. You may tap it to add 1 mana of any color. I really like this. Like, it's a manalith. that also lets you scry one, so strictly better. Like I said, they're like, it's not a guild set, but there are lots of gold cards, and you may be running a fair few gold cards. Also, just from a glance, like, the mana costs are a bit, like, shifted towards the upper side. A lot of the time with, like, some example decks I've drafted and things like that. So, like, that ramp is nice, the fixing is nice, the scry is nice, so, like, even late game and you don't need the mana, it helps you set up your future draws, which is, like, the main downside of manoliths. So, I quite like Mana Geode quite a bit, so, yeah. Not much else to say, but yeah, solid. Prismite, which is a 2 mana, 2/1. You may pay 2 to add 1 mana of any color, so you can filter in mana. I'm not like this. Don't run this for your fixing. Like, I don't like fixing that puts you down a thing, and stapling it onto a bad creature does not help. No to Prismite. Saheeli's Silverwing, which is a 4 mana, 2/3 of flying. When it enters the battlefield, look at the top card of target opponent's library. I mean, 4 mana, 2/3 flying is like, it's a little bit below curve for what I want for my flyers, but it's passable if you need a 4-drop. That ability is largely not relevant. So, yeah, no, I'm just like, it's fine. But I'm not happy about taking it. Like, it's a card that, like, I will run, but I am not happy about running it. So, yeah. Onto the lands. First we have Blast Zone. Blast Zone enters with a charge counter on it, and may tap to add colorless. You pay XX and tap it to put X counters on it. You pay 3 and tap it to sacrifice it to destroy each non-land permanent with converted mana cost equal to the number of charge counters on Blast Zone. This is a very mana-intensive set, and, like, I don't know how to evaluate this card. It just seems too slow. Your opponent sees it coming, so they're going to play around it, and it just doesn't seem to work well. Like, there's cute things you can do if you want to, like mess with the number of counters by, like, using proliferate and stuff, but, yeah. I'm just like, it's fine. It's perfectly fine. No, it's not fine. I think just the not having the colored mana is too much of a liability for this card, and its effect isn't something I'm really going out of my way to use. It's just way too mana extensive. Your opponent sees it coming a mile away. Yeah. And to use it, you have to sacrifice your land, so it's like, yeah. No thank you. Emergence Zone. You can tap it to add a colorless, and you pay 1 and tap it, sacrifice it, and you may cast spells this turn as though they had flash. Again, I don't really like this. Like, it's an effect, it's a cool effect, and you'll probably use it to, like, ambush something, but you're having to, like, spend 2 mana, because you don't get it itself's mana, to, like, use this. You're having to, like, cast something smaller, so it's like, there are situations where it can be like, ooh, I have to watch out for that. But, again, I don't want to be sacrificing my colored mana for an effect that is so minor. So, not big on Emergence Zone. Next we have Gateway Plaza, which is enters battlefield tapped, enters battlefield sacrifice unless you pay 1. So, it's very slow. You'll usually play this turn, like, 2, and, like, spend your turn 2 off to get it going. But in a sense, like, you're paying, like, 2 mana for your mana fixing. Like, you're spending your turn paying for your fixing. And, like, if you need a splash, this isn't bad. Especially in the absence of, like, guild gates and things like that. So, yeah, that's essentially what I have to say about it. Next we have Interplanar Beacon, which is whenever you cast a Planeswalker spell, you gain 1 life, which is just kind of like an extra added benefit. You may tap to add colorless, and you pay 1 and tap it to add 2 mana of different colors. Spend this mana only to cast Planeswalker spells. So if you are in that kind of Super Friends deck, or if what you're splashing for is a Planeswalker, I like this. Like, it's not bad. Like, it gives you that little bit of advantage. It's not huge, but it's solid. Like, it's not bad. And it's a cute little bit of fixing. Yeah, that's all I have to say about that. And next we have Karn's Bastion, which is a land that taps for colorless. You also pay 4 and tap it to proliferate. Now this is a colorless land, which I am willing to be like, yeah, that's solid. Obviously, you have to have the cards that care about proliferate, which isn't super hard in this set. But being able to stable that onto a land that just gives you that late game mana sink, that gives you a lot of advantage. It helps all of your uncommon walkers, so it can help start giving them extra utility and things like that. It just makes Karn's Bastion very solid. So, Karn's Bastion, I do like, actually. But yeah, but you do need those payoffs. If you don't have enough payoffs, you're probably better off having just more solid mana. Mobilized District, which is another colorless land. You may tap it to add colorless. You may pay 4 and have it become a 3/3 citizen creature with vigilance until end of turn. It is still land, and it costs 1 less for each legendary creature and planeswalker you control. So it's a land that can become, it's a man land that can potentially become less, I mean, for 4 mana, turning this creature into a 3/3 with vigilance, I don't hate that. It doesn't come in tapped or anything, and the fact that it also can be made cheaper, if you're able to have a few planeswalkers out and this is only costing you 2 mana, I really like this. So yeah, I think it's solid. I'm not going out of my way to draft it super early, but it is another one of those colorless lands that I don't feel bad for, just when I need to, it can be a creature. And otherwise it's fine. And the fact that it doesn't come in tapped, I'm sure it's colorless, but yeah. Obviously these colorless ones, if you are splashing, don't run them. Your mana is stretched as is, but yeah. And with that took ages because planeswalkers take a long to thing. Granted, I did this episode first, and it has the most planeswalkers. Also has the most cards. So the other episodes will be a tad shorter. So yeah, let me know what you think. Do you disagree with any of my evaluations? I kind of want to get better at this. Doing this series is kind of my review for the pre-release and draft weekend and things like that myself. So yeah. I hope you enjoyed the video. It's a very long video. But yeah. Well, and words or anything. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video and hope you have a wonderful night. And as always, may your stories smile upon you.